is we're introducing the ballot, the Yes on C. This is the ballot that will locate money for the small site acquisition, to land trust, and to rehab buildings. So we'll start it off with Supervisor Peskin, and to tell us more about Yes on C.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't need that microphone. It scares me. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming. Over a quarter of a century ago, you will recall San Francisco had a little crisis. Not an affordable housing crisis, but an earthquake. And in 1989, in the wake of the Loma Prieta earthquake, the city and county of San Francisco required all of the owners of unreinforced masonry buildings to bring those buildings into the dawn to the end of the 20th century building standards. And there were thousands of buildings that needed to be seismically retrofitted. In 1992, the Board of Supervisors put a $350 million general obligation bond on the ballot to provide funding both for-profit and non-profit organizations to do their seismic retrofit. Here we are a quarter of a century later, 24 years to be exact, and $261 million of that $350 million that was approved by a supermajority of the San Francisco electorate remains unspent. I want to start by thanking my staff, Sunny and Gulo, who managed to figure out what no one else has been able to figure out over the last 20 years, which was how to repurpose that money. And what Proposition C on this November's ballot does is it expands the uses of that $261 million to allow us to acquire and rehabilitate at-risk housing, including housing that has been the subject of devastation through fires, which is all too well known by the mission. This would allow as much as $35 million a year to be spent each and every year to help stabilize some of our most vulnerable affordable housing. Last June, we passed Proposition C, which increased the rate of inclusionary affordable housing in new market rate construction. This year's Proposition C, this November's Proposition C, will allow us to preserve and safeguard and acquire and rehabilitate some of the at-risk affordable housing that we have in San Francisco. I am delighted to be joined by many members of the community. I also want to say today, insofar as I see representatives of our fire department, that we received the endorsement of Local 798, the firefighters union, for Proposition C. With that, I will turn it back over to all of you guys.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Supervisor, for a great explanation. And the next speaker is Gabriel Medina from Mission Economic and Development Agency.
Maybe I'm not. All right, my name is Gabriel Medina. I'm with MEDA, the Mission Economic Development Agency. We've been operating in the mission now for 43 years to protect the low-income community. All right, and one of the crises that our clients have demonstrated is the crisis for housing. We all know the crisis for housing is really strong, and the mission has a special pressure about why Prop C is especially important for us. The mission has been devastated by fires, like just Mission Street alone, within 7 blocks. Here, 120 tenants have been displaced by fire. We're talking about 30 units over 2 buildings that could be helped by Proposition C. This is a crisis. We need this emergency funding. We need this funding right now. We're happy that Supervisor Peskin and Choo Choo, and Bishop and HR Housing Rights Committee, and a lot of organizations are here to help support Proposition C. We know that the Board of Supervisors has the wisdom to put this on the board to free up this over $200 million. So we can, help build important foundations for our families so they can continue to maintain the mission as a gateway community for working families and for Latino immigrants here in San Francisco. So that's why we're supporting Proposition C. There's never enough money for small sites acquisition. It's the quickest, very efficient way to preserve affordable housing and keep working class families, not just in San Francisco, but here in the mission.
I can't have you hit by a car.
Thank you, Gabriel. The next speaker will be me. I'm Theresa Imperial from Veterans Equity Center, Bellstar Housing Program. Our organization is located in South of Marti. Earlier this year, the Board of Supervisors approved the Filipino Cultural Heritage District, and we called it Soma Pilipinas. We support as an organization of Filipino, World War II Filipino veterans and who help Filipino families in applying for affordable housing. We support this proposition as well. We have seen families in South of Market who live in rent-controlled units where they are being victims of predatory speculation. And since with the approval of the Filipino Cultural Heritage District, there are also historical buildings that are also on threat of being out in the market and being put in a speculative market. And one of it is the Gran Oriente. So we really we would like to push for this Prop C to help rent-control buildings in South of Market and historical buildings that has a big history for Filipino community in South of Market. So this Prop C will help keep the communities intact and families intact and keep the legacy alive of the community that has been here in the city. So yes on C. Thank you very much. The next one, I think, is Fernando Marti, who will talk into the weeds of Prop C.
Hopefully not too into the weeds. My name is Fernando Marti. I'm co-director of the Council of Community Housing Organizations. Prop C, if it passes, is the only measure on the ballot that will produce new affordable housing, permanent affordable housing for the people who live in their buildings. It's going to be a tough lift. It requires a 2/3 vote because it is an old bond that we are expanding the uses, and bonds require 2/3 vote. But I want to step back for a second. As you walk in the Mission District, you'll see many buildings. Actually, most of the buildings were built here between 1910 and 1920. Many of them are what are called soft story, meaning that if you see a building on a corner with a store and 3 or 4 stories above it and an earthquake comes, it's very likely to tip over on that ground floor. What this measure will do is help to preserve those buildings. You will also see, because those buildings are very old, like the Mission Market right here, which was not actually that old, has very old electrical wiring. Those are the buildings where fires are happening. But the most important thing for a lot of people, because those things happen every so often, what's happening every day, every 2 days there is an eviction in this neighborhood. Every 3 days or so there's a family that is taken out of their home, either through an Ellis Act or more recently by landlords pushing their tenants out through all sorts of tactics. What this measure will do is take all of those issues and try to preserve those buildings by buying them and preserving them as permanent, affordable housing. We will be doing this throughout the city. This is one place. This example right behind us is one of the buildings that we could have saved had we had something like Prop C around a few years ago. So with that, I'm hoping that you will join us in voting for Proposition C this November, the only measure that will immediately put money on the ground to preserve housing as permanently affordable housing for the tenants who live there.
Thank you. that concludes this event. Are there any questions from the media that would like?
Will be available.
And will be available.